And the thing is when you take yourself for granted, other people will take you for granted too, because they think that you're okay with that. So that's, again, going back to this, what are you available for? So if you are playing into that, like taking yourself for granted, putting yourself at the bottom of your list of priorities, always saying yes, even when deep down inside you really want to say no, but you're afraid to say no, then what happens is that other people think that, oh, she's okay with this kind of treatment, so we're going to continue to treat her that way because she's not saying no. Welcome to the Psychology and Manifestation Podcast with your host, Sudane Firestar. Discover how to tap into the power of science and spirituality, the practical and the magical, to create the life of your dreams on your terms. Let's get into it. Hello, my dear. Welcome to another episode of the Psychology and Manifestation Podcast with your host, Sudane Firestar. We are getting back into the pop-off series where we're saying peace out to people pleasing. And today we're concentrating on treating yourself the way you want others to treat you. We're basically saying F it to the golden rule in which you're taught to treat other people the way that you want to be treated. Because what I found in my own experience is that when I prioritize everyone else besides myself and I put myself at the bottom of my list of priorities, then I'm kind of taken for granted. And when I flipped the script, when I changed things around and I started to make sure that I was well taken care of and I made sure that my cup was filled, then I was able to pour more into others. And I also had that reflected back to me where people really started to value me a lot more. So we're going to talk about that a bit later. But first, let's get into a quick life update. It really does have to be quick. It's around 6:45 in the morning, and soon I have to wake up my daughter because she's going to her first day of 3K. And if you don't know what that is, in New York City, now public schools have a program for children who are 3 years old. And so they attend 3K before they attend pre-K. And she's been in daycare for the past 2 years, and it's been a relatively small environment. So this is going to be brand new for her to be like what I call big girl school. So I'm excited for her. I'm going to drop her off. She's going to be there for a half day, and then she's going to be picked up by grandma because the hours this week don't align with my actual work schedule. So I'm so grateful to have the village that I have, and I'm also so grateful to have the village that I have at work where my supervisors are so flexible and they're like, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. So, for these first couple of days of her school year, I am able to get to work later and then stay later to make up my time. So what a blessing. And if I was still in people-pleasing mode, I would not have this at all. Like, I had to do that work, take the necessary action steps, whether spiritual or practical, to get to this point that allowed me to create this really beautiful environment where I'm surrounded by amazing people, whether that's my colleagues, my supervisors, and I've forever have had the strongest network of family and friends. So what a blessing. And oh no, I forgot to turn off the white noise machine, like the monitor for my daughter. So if you hear that in the background, I'm sorry, but we're just going to rock with it because I'm short on time this morning. All right. And I also realized when I recorded the last episode of the pop-off series that I didn't even provide a definition of what people-pleasing is. So before I dive into treating yourself the way that you want other people to treat you, I'm going to start the episode off talking about what people-pleasing is. People-pleasing is when a person prioritizes the needs and desires of other people over their own, and it's often to an unhealthy extent. And the motivations behind people-pleasing can include insecurities, a desire to gain approval from others, and also to maintain relationships. And this is also associated with the desire to be liked, right? In order to maintain a relationship with others, people may feel like they need to people-please and to do whatever it takes to be liked by the people in their lives. People will also do people-pleasing because they have a fear of rejection, a fear of disappointing others or making other people angry. And they have a strong desire to avoid conflict. They're very conflict averse. Conflict makes them feel very uncomfortable. And the consequences of people-pleasing can include feeling burnt out, feeling resentful. Obviously, if you're in a state of constantly putting other people's needs above your own, you might tend to feel resentful that your needs are not being met. And people pleasing can also be emotionally and physically draining. You're giving so much to others that there isn't much left for you at the end of the day. Some of the characteristics of someone who is in people-pleasing mode can include a low sense of self-worth and low self-confidence, low self-esteem, as I mentioned before, putting everyone's needs before your own, deprioritizing your own needs, going with the flow, going along to get along. You don't want other people to be upset, so you're inclined to agree with other people and suppress your own opinions, thoughts, and feelings so that, other people continue to like you and you don't upset anyone. Having difficulty being assertive, having difficulty saying no, and taking on too many responsibility and overloading yourself because you want to make other people happy, even if it doesn't make sense for you to do as much as you're doing. Like you're having a hard time saying no to people. It also comes from there's a certain level of value that someone who's in people-pleasing mode feels when complying with the demands of other people, because that comes from that external validation and approval, like getting that, yay, good, you did a great job, or you get an A+ for doing so well, so that they also thrive on receiving praise from other people. So rather than relying on themselves and looking within themselves for that validation, they are looking externally for other people to approve of them and to validate them. And people pleasers tend to be inclined to apologize, even if they haven't done anything wrong and it's for no reason. And they may take things on and identify things that they think are their fault when these things are not their fault. And people pleasers may also be inclined to excuse other people's bad behavior. When other people are not on their best behavior, the people pleaser might be inclined to minimize that. So these are just some of the things that you might see if you are in people-pleasing mode. You might see these types of behaviors or characteristics within yourself. So for anyone who's inclined to be in people-pleasing mode, I say to you, don't treat people the way you want to be treated and end up sacrificing yourself. Let's just say F it to the golden rule. Treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. You get to set the standard for how other people treat you. You decide what you are and are not available for, because then what happens is that people follow your lead. You're setting the example for your own expectations. You're modeling the behaviors for the other people around you. And so when they see how you treat yourself, they may be inclined to lead, to follow your lead. But I'm going to put out a disclaimer here. Not everyone is going to be happy with you doing this. It's not like when you start setting your boundaries and you're sticking up for yourself and you're setting the standard for how you want to be treated, that everyone in your life who is used to you people pleasing and they're used to getting their own way is going to be like, oh, yay, let me roll out the red carpet for you because you are standing up for yourself and we're just so happy to see you do it. The people who truly love you and care about you in your life are gonna do that for sure. If they truly care about you, they're gonna want you to be happy. They want to be happy, but they want you to be happy too. And so it's gonna be okay with them that you are prioritizing your own needs. They're gonna be happy to see you taking care of yourself, but there are gonna be people in your life who don't give a shit about you, to be quite honest with you. And the only person that they care about is themselves or, their own agenda. And so when they see you prioritizing your own needs, that may make them angry. And if you're typically, used to being people-pleasing mode and you always want to make other people happy because you're scared of the wrath, right? You don't want other people to be upset. This can be hard. I'm putting that disclaimer out there that there is some risk to treating yourself the way that you want other people to treat you and starting to set healthy boundaries for yourself. Again, the people who care about you are going to be on board with that. The people who truly love you are going to be there for you. And then you're going to start to realize, or you're going to start to find out those people who only really liked you or appreciated you because you were playing according to their game and you were, living life on their agenda. And now when you want to prioritize yourself too, they may not like that. All right, so that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's really important to explain that to you so you're not expecting like rainbows and butterflies and a positive reaction from everyone. You probably already know that if you've already had this fear throughout your day to day life of upsetting other people if you push back a little bit and you say what you are and you aren't available for. But if you go back to listen to episode 1 of the podcast, I talk about leaning into faith over fear. And that same concept matters here. So that same kind of law of attraction manifestation concept applies here too. So here too, you're going to have to you have to engage in a lot of self-care to make sure that you're able to get through this and to get onto the other side thriving. And you're able to do this. You're capable. You're more powerful than you know. As a former people pleaser myself, what I noticed was when I was treating other people the way that I wanted to be treated, and I was bending over backwards to fulfill their needs, I really wound up being on the bottom of my own list of priorities. And I was sacrificing even like basic needs, like, that could be eating your lunch, getting high quality rest, like, really giving to yourself in your personal life. I'm also going to use a lot of work examples because this is like one of the last significant places in which I started to set boundaries and prioritize my own needs. But I just, there were certain things like I was sacrificing some of my basic needs to prioritize the demands of other people around me. And what I also found was no matter how much I gave, it never was enough for certain people. So if you're in people pleasing mode, you might also recognize the same. So no matter how much you give, it's never enough. And the thing is when you take yourself for granted, other people will take you for granted too, because they think that you're okay with that. So that's, again, going back to this, what are you available for? So if you are playing into that, like taking yourself for granted, putting yourself at the bottom of your list of priorities, always saying yes, even when deep down inside you really want to say no, but you're afraid to say no, then what happens is that other people think that, oh, she's okay with this kind of treatment, so we're going to continue to treat her that way because she's not saying no. And I have plenty of examples of, whether that's myself, like how I set boundaries, both, like mostly non-verbally, sometimes verbally if I need to, but I know of people who are setting boundaries for themselves, both verbally and non-verbally, and I can give you specific examples of what that could look like. And so when we're thinking about law of attraction, because, we talk about the spirituality aspect, the manifestation aspect in this podcast as well, is this important idea that you have to become an energetic match for your desires. So if you want to be valued by others, you have to value yourself. If you want people to treat you with kindness, you have to be kind to yourself. So again, it begins with you. Like, they talk about like attracts like. So you have to start to show other people, what you value about yourself, and then other people will start to value those things about you too. Okay, so let's talk about what you don't want, because in law of attraction, when you know what you don't want, you can kind of flip that around to focus on more of what you do want. So you kind of start from where you are and then you work towards your desires and you start focusing more attention on what you do want to attract and who you do want to become, and less on what you don't want. But let's still start with what you don't want. You don't want to be that person who is easily manipulated, dominated by others, fearful, unsure of yourself, uncertain, right? Anxious. This is someone who I used to be, and I'm so grateful that I'm not there anymore. It was very stressful to be in that state on a routine basis. And the thing about it is that when we're talking about, what you're attracting, like people can literally sniff out people who are anxious, people who are easily manipulated, people who are scared and unsure of themselves. And you don't want to attract the people who are attracted to that type of energy. Okay? People can feel it. People can sniff it out and then they might want to take advantage of it. Obviously, you're going to always have those people who are just naturally kind-hearted people, or they were just raised to be kind people and that's how they conduct themselves all the time. But if you want people to consistently value you and treat you with kindness, then you can't live life by default. You need to know clearly what it is that you want and act accordingly. Okay, so that you're not having these like inconsistent manifestations in your life where, in the past for me, I used to, of course, have people who were encouraging, who were loving, who were kind, who believed in me and who were on my side. But then I would also have these other people who were extremely hostile with me, and demanding and belittling. So, I wanted to get rid of that. Like, let's be done with that. So instead of living life by default and wondering, like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Like, I got to a point in my life where I decided exactly what it was I wanted. And I started to make the necessary changes in my life using spirituality and practical strategies to ensure that I was going to get more of what I wanted and not just be so surprised by these moments where people were just being crazy with me, right? So I knew that it had to start with me, that I couldn't be like the helpless person blaming everything on everyone else, right? I had to take responsibility for my own behavior and my own life and to take control of my own power, right? And to live more in my power. So going back to what I was talking about people who are inclined to dominate, people who behave this way, who are people pleasers, the predator knows the prey and they know who to target. So they're more inclined to be attracted to someone who they can dominate if they're inclined to dominate other people. And the thing is that you might encounter people who are more demanding and they expect instant gratification, especially if you're behaving in a manner that, I guess, increases people, having that behavior where they expect instant gratification. So an example of that could be that when they, call you at some inappropriate time, like say it's a colleague or a supervisor that calls you at some inappropriate time of night for something that isn't really an emergency, right? So they're calling you at 10 p.m. because they just realized, that they wanted you to work on some aspect of a project or, they wanted you to research a specific topic. And again, it's not an emergency, but it's just an idea that popped into their mind at 10 p.m. And they're like, oh, I'm going to call, so-and-so and tell her that this was on my mind and she can write that down and maybe work on that now, right? But if you're answering your phone at 10, your phone is on and it's not on do not disturb and you're answering your phone at 10 p.m., which is outside of your designated work hours or your agreed upon work hours, and that person is like, oh, she answered the phone at 10 p.m. She's available for that. So anytime, I need anything at any time of day, whether it's, nights or weekends, I can call her at any time and she's available to speak to me. Like they got that instant gratification, right? They got that immediate, physical, mental high, ooh, my needs were met, exactly what I wanted when I wanted it. And then if you continue that pattern because you're not setting the boundaries for yourself, then they're, if that person is getting their needs met, why should they stop, right? They're going to keep going because they know, when I say jump, she says how high and she's just available for it. So that's what I'm talking about. So, people can tend to become more demanding because you're feeding into their demands, you're feeding into their instant gratification. And then also sometimes people can become more manipulative. Like I've had that in my past, that good cop, bad cop behavior where they know that they can feed on your fears and that if they tell you something that's going to scare you, that they might get what they want, right? So I've had that too, where there's one person who's pretending to be on your side and then the other person is pushing you and clapping their hands to get you to do what they want. Okay, they might use guilt tripping. There might be double standards, and they might be inclined to make an example of you because you're the goody two-shoes. You're the one who follows the rules. You're the one who does exactly what it is that they want, right? So these are the kind of things that happen with people pleasing and how other people might respond to that people pleasing energy. And so when I'm talking about that double standard or making an example of you, so for example, I know of someone who is, very hardworking, always does what they're supposed to be doing, following the rules. And then there are some other people who don't follow the rules where this person works. And so there was a time where, a supervisor noticed them on their phone and then said something to them about it. And this person is not typically someone who looks at their phone. And so then what happened was that person felt so bad, oh my goodness, I got in trouble. They saw me on the phone, all this stuff, and I typically don't do that. Other people, are on their phones. It's not usually me. And I said, well, the thing is that, your supervisor knows that you're someone who follows the rules and listens to them and respects them and does the right thing. And they know that there's some other people around who, no matter how much they speak to them or like chastise them about their behavior, those people are not going to stop. They're going to continue to engage in the same behaviors for whatever reason. Those people just don't have the same fears. They don't have the same worries that you have about like getting in trouble, right? So who is this person going to talk to when they see, maybe you're, stepping out of line slightly? They're going to talk to you. They're not going to talk to those other people because they know that those other people are not listening and you're the one who's going to listen. So I'm not encouraging you to like break any rules or to be rebellious at work or anything like that. But my point is that people see your character and how you conduct yourself. That determines how they're going to approach you and how they're going to interact with you. So again, that other person who is like, whatever, like, I don't care, I'm just going to break the rules and do whatever, no matter how many times you told me not to. And, they're not going to waste their breath on that person. Like, why should they bother wasting their breath on that person who is not going to listen to them, right? Okay, so now let's transition into what you do want. You want to be the person who sets boundaries, is a clear communicator. You're calm under pressure and just like as calm as possible in general because you're engaging in self-care. Again, go back to episode 1 if you want to hear more about self-care. You are self-assured, you're confident, you are certain. You value yourself, you trust and respect yourself. So you're going to attract that kind of energy from other people. You're going to attract other people who are respectful of your boundaries that you have set. You're going to attract people who trust you because they see that you're confident and you trust yourself. So they don't feel this need to micromanage you in the same way. They are going to value you. They're going to recognize your worth because you recognize your own worth. You know just how worthy you are and how much of an asset you are and how much you deliver and how much you bring to the table. Like, you don't need other people to validate you and to tell you how wonderful you are and to praise you because you already know. You already know the value that you bring. So as I mentioned earlier, you can demonstrate how you want to be treated or what your standards are, both in verbal and nonverbal ways. So I can give you some examples that I have for the way that I nonverbally set boundaries, and you can decide if that's something that you want to apply in your own life or if you're not focused on setting boundaries at work, then you can figure out similar ways to do what I've done with, your personal relationships. Okay, so one way of non-verbally setting a boundary might be that you don't jump to answer an email that someone sends you after hours. Okay. Or if you do just want to get things out of the way, because maybe you're concerned about your working memory and having to remember a gazillion things and you saw that email, you just want to get it off your list of priorities. What you could do is just, reply to it, but schedule it to go out during an appropriate time of day. Because if you're, like as I mentioned before, if you're emailing, like I talked about phone calls, answering phone calls, but if you're responding to emails on nights and weekends, other people are going to be like, okay, she's working on nights and weekends. I can reach out to her anytime I want because she's available at all times. Okay, so to prevent that kind of response from other people, what you can do is either just not look at your emails on nights and weekends, set do not disturb on your phone so you're not receiving those notifications, at times when you're not working. Because the way that I see it too is that email is specifically for things that are not urgent. If something is urgent, I would hope that people are picking up the phone and calling you. Okay, so they're putting in a phone call, or if you're physically in the same place, like you're in the same office building or something like that, that they're just gonna take a little walk or hop on the elevator and come have a conversation with you directly if it's an emergency. But I really don't believe in sending emails that are urgent and really expecting an immediate response because not everyone is glued to their computer or their cell phone, their email account and their cell phone and responding right away. Okay, I have a few other examples of how I started treating myself the way that I wanted other people to treat me and how I started setting boundaries because, as I mentioned before, I knew I needed to set boundaries for my own physical and mental health, and I knew that I needed to become an energetic match for the things that I wanted. So some of the things that I did was I determined how many hours of sleep I wanted, And I also, so then I made sure that I went to sleep at a certain time at night, and that I woke up at a certain time in the morning that aligned with how many hours of sleep I felt like I needed for my own physical and mental health, every day, every night. I also set do not disturb hours on my devices for my email to avoid receiving notifications at all hours, because previously I would receive work notifications by email at like 4:30 in the morning, because we had an automated system that would send out these very early emails and notifications about deadlines and things. And so that was something that used to make me like pop up in the middle of the night with my heart racing. So I knew that I could not allow that anymore. I had to have do not disturb on my devices. I also turned off my devices at night. I put my devices in a drawer away from my bed. I used to stay super late at work, like 1 to 2 hours late. Actually, maybe even longer than that. I used to stay like super late. And sometimes I would come home, eat dinner, and then get right back to work. So I could be working at 10 p.m., midnight, which is really crazy, because also it left me so drained, as I talked about, me determining how many hours of sleep I needed. But prior to that, I was getting very little sleep, and I was so anxious, and I would wake up and go to work, still really drained and probably running on adrenaline because I was doing work at all hours and not giving my body the rest that it needed. So I had to cut that off. So I started leaving work on time so that I would have the energy and the brain power to function at a higher level on a daily basis. As I mentioned in episode 1, I started to create a morning routine. I had a lot of self-care practices that I integrated into my morning routine, and they nurtured my physical and my mental health. I knew that I had to prioritize my physical, mental, and emotional health in order to thrive, for the rest of my life. So if you want more information about self-care and morning routines, you can go back to episode 1. I have a freebie that you can download that's like a 10-minute morning routine that you can implement now if you have a busy schedule and you want to start to be able to attend better to your physical, mental, and emotional health. And I can also link that freebie in the show notes with this episode, but this is likely going to be the last week when it's available for free. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, I would encourage you to get it now. Okay. So once I started to take better care of myself, I attracted people later who agreed with that. So I told you, that disclaimer section, initially there were some people that were not happy, but there were people that were happy for me. And then I started to attract more people who were happy with me, happy for me, people who were respectful of the boundaries that I was setting for myself, both supervisors and colleagues who were on board with it. So at this point in my life and my work, I don't have people who contact me, outside of work hours or during breaks or on, nights and weekends. It just really doesn't happen. They are very respectful. And if they do contact me outside of those times, they are typically, very apologetic. And they're like, I'm sorry to bother you. But they're not demanding. And they don't have this expectation that I should be using my personal time for work. They don't think that. And I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm completely inflexible and that if it's somebody really needs support or really needs something urgently, that I'm just going to be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. As much as I can be a team player, I try to be a team player as much as possible because I really care about the people that I work with. But I'm saying that I still have a certain level of boundaries in place to which they want to respect those boundaries. And, I also feel very valued in the work that I do. And it's not like people come and pat me on the back every day and say, oh my goodness, you're doing such a great job. Not necessarily, but there are other ways in which that love and that appreciation is shown. So anytime the educators in the work that I do, the teachers are being celebrated or, given some kind of, gifts, I'm always included. I'm always acknowledged, even when they, had a graduation last year, well, I guess, last year meaning last school year, which is still the current year. And they needed to recognize people in the brochure for the students who were graduating, the seniors. They included me. They included other people who work with me closely. So, I mean, I just always feel like, valued in that way. Like they remember me when I, for a period of time, said that I wasn't going to be able to return to the job because of, personal family things. They were upset to see me leave. Like they literally said, "You suck." One person said, "You suck," and the other person said, "I hope you don't find another job." And look, I found my way back to them, so maybe they were right. But I love them, so I am back. But the thing is that I could feel it. Like I can feel the value. Like I have a lot of autonomy in the work that I do. My supervisors trust me. They know that I've got it, and that means the world to me. But that came from me also valuing myself, having a high self-worth, having an increase in confidence, knowing that I'm an asset. Like then I attracted people who, see me or saw me the same way. If you want to verbally set boundaries, because what I was sharing with you is more of like a non-verbal way of setting boundaries. But I know of some people who are very direct in setting their boundaries, and it might not just be in verbal, like they're speaking to someone, but it might just be in written form. Like I know I had a former professor who put in her, I believe it was her email signature, when she would be checking emails, so that people knew that if they emailed her at other times of days or, day or on the weekends, that they were not going to hear from her. Like they needed to wait till these specific times to receive a response from her. Right? So that's more of like a direct, verbal, I guess written form way of communicating. But I mean, it's like more like direct communication rather than just like a regular action. It's telling people directly, like, this is my boundary. So this is what you can expect from me. So that was very explicit. And I was like, oh, excuse me. Like, I really loved that she was setting that boundary for herself. And she made it very clear when she would be checking her emails. And so when you could expect a response from her. You could also do that in an out of office message. I've seen that too, where people put it on an out of office message that they just have on all the time that lets people know when they can expect a response. You could also do this by putting up signs on your office door to indicate when you're busy. You could put up a sign outside of your office door that indicates that you're in a meeting or you're testing if you're a school psychologist like I am, or that you're, writing a report or something like that. But you can set boundaries that way if you want to. I mean, just going back to the school psychology example, since I also work with a lot of older students, I work with younger students too, but since I work with some older students, I tend to not put that sign up outside my door just for their own privacy so that their peers don't need to know all of their business. But you get what I'm saying. If, you want to set a direct boundary, like in written form, you can put up a sign. I also know of someone who just had a direct conversation with the supervisor at her job where she had a certain number of days that she could take each year, but there's this like policy at her job that once you get close to using up that amount of time, that then like people will, your supervisor might give you a warning or want to hold a meeting with you. And she straight up just told her boss, like, I'm just going to tell you in advance that I'm going to take all of my days. So like, we don't need to have a meeting about it because I'm just going to let you know that this is what I plan to be doing. And she could have that like honest, direct conversation with her supervisor because she is certainly an asset. Like she brings a lot to the table. She does so many things and she's highly valued at her job. So she already knows her worth and they know her worth too. So she's she's in that position where she's able to, I guess, be more assertive and direct about it, right? Like to say like, I'm just letting you know in advance that this is what I'm planning to do. So that also in terms of, setting boundaries, like having clear and open communication helps a lot as well. So, sometimes it's a matter of, scheduling a meeting and having a direct conversation. I will say that for myself with some people, like this whole thing of setting up meetings doesn't always work. Some people, it depends, the people who, care, who are caring and want to be team players are more inclined to be receptive to a meeting. But I will let you know that it's not always the case that you have a meeting with people and they're like, yay, we're all on the same page, we're all on board, we see it your way. No, not always. Okay, so I'm going to provide a non-work example since it may not be that you need to do a lot of boundary setting or that you're struggling with people pleasing within work. Sometimes that can be happening in your romantic life, as I mentioned, sometimes with your children. And I still needed to do a bit of work on the area with children. So that is going to be like probably an episode for a much later time because that's still a work in progress for me. But in terms of a non-work example of setting standards for yourself or setting high standards and treating yourself the way that you want other people to treat you, I know of some people who will do, or not that I know, I can't think of anyone specific, honestly, but this is something that I've heard recommended by others where if you want to attract your ideal romantic relationship, you have to treat yourself the way that you would want a romantic partner to treat you. So, women who are doing this, who want to attract a romantic partner who's going to treat them, in a certain way, is that they might, if they want someone who's going to take them out, they're going to take themselves out on solo dates. If they want someone to buy them flowers, they're going to buy themselves flowers. They're going to buy themselves gifts. They're going to go on solo vacations if they want a partner who is going to travel the world with them. They might go on their vacations with friends, but they're not necessarily waiting, for someone else to come into their life and to do these things for them. If they want to get dressed up and pamper themselves, or they want someone else who's going to pamper them, they pamper themselves. And they do all of these amazing things for themselves that they would want a partner to do. And this works on a spiritual level, but it also works on a practical level because they are modeling how they want to be treated. So anyone who encounters them or comes into their energy or into their world is going to see where their standards lie and want to, if those people really want to attract them as a partner, they're going to want to, live up to those expectations and to meet those standards. The other benefit to this is that the other person is going to see that this woman is happy alone, right? She already has high standards for herself. She's clear about what her standards are. And the other person is going to see that she's a complete person. She does not need to be completed by them. And that's very attractive. So this other person will add value to her life and enhance it. But she doesn't need that partner to do all of these things for her because she's already taking really good care of herself and she's romanticizing her life. So this person will come into her life and aim to match that same energy that she is putting out. She's setting a high standard for herself. She knows her self-worth and she is not willing to settle for subpar treatment. So that's what it looks like in, a romantic example of how a woman takes care of herself and how she treats herself the way that she would want a partner to treat her. All right, so that's what I have for you today. So for summaries, to start popping off, aka saying peace out to people pleasing, you have to treat yourself the way that you want other people to treat you. You set the standards for how you want to be treated and you set them high. You let people know what you are and you are not available for. And as I mentioned, you can do this in verbal and nonverbal ways. And, in terms of communication, people will oftentimes say that nonverbal communication is the most dominant form of communication that we have. All right. And another cliche incoming. Actions speak louder than words. So you show through your actions what you mean, that you mean what you say and that you say what you mean, and you follow through on setting your boundaries. Again, so if you say that, you don't work on weekends, you follow through. You don't work on weekends. Again, as I said, you can have the occasional exception, but you don't want to make it a habit of, breaking your own rules and, crossing your own boundaries, because then you're setting a precedent for other people to do the same. Okay. So the benefit of treating yourself the way that you want other people to treat you is that you're going to attract more people who treat you in the ways you've always desired to be treated. So if you want to be treated like a leader, then you act like a leader and, you conduct yourself as a leader would conduct themselves. If you want to be valued, you value yourself. If you want to be respected, you respect yourself. You don't settle for subpar treatment because when you do, people think you're okay with it. Right? And then they keep doing it. They keep crossing your boundaries. And when you're in people-pleasing mode, you're self-sacrificing and you're putting yourself low on your list of priorities. And that negatively affects your mental, emotional, and physical health when you are not putting yourself high up on your list. Sometimes when you have children, sometimes they come first, right? Or you might have an elderly parent who really needs you and you might put them first because they're a more vulnerable person. But as much as possible, you want to put yourself high up on the list. If not first, then, hopefully second. And so overcoming people pleasing will do a lot to enhance the quality of your life. You'll experience so much harmony and happiness in your life when you are being true to yourself, when you are acting in alignment with your own heart and your own heartfelt desires. So, when you say no, you mean no. And when you say yes, you mean yes. And you're not saying yes or no because you feel guilty or because you fear how someone else is going to react to you, right? And you're at peace for whatever happens, right? Because you know that the universe has your back. You trust yourself, you believe in yourself, you know your worth. So you can always be honest and act in accordance with your highest self. All right, in terms of homework, what can you do with everything that I shared with you today? So something you could do is you can reflect on your life and consider, are there areas in which you find yourself people pleasing? And if you do, in what relationships do you find yourself doing this? Because perhaps you've overcome people pleasing in one area of your life and not another, or maybe you're not even aware that you're people pleasing in other areas of your life. So I can say that that's the case for me, where I, had overcome people pleasing at work and I was able to set boundaries there, but I was completely unaware that I had transferred my habits, my people pleasing habits, to the relationship that I was forming with my daughter after she was born. Obviously infants need a lot of love and care. They are dependent on us, other people to care for them. But at the same time, I realized that I was sacrificing a lot of my own basic needs. I'm talking really basic things like eating, sleeping, showering. I would go an extended period of time without nurturing myself because I was so concerned about her being upset. And I think I can address this in some other episode. I remember walking to Alice's teacup. I had this one day off and I hadn't really had a lot of time to myself. I was working and, most of the time when I had, breaks from work, my daughter also had the same breaks, but this was just one day where she still had daycare and I had a day off from work. And I remember walking from the subway to Alice's teacup and having this light bulb moment of oh my goodness, I see this pattern in me. I see this pattern in that I am people pleasing with my daughter, where I'm sacrificing so much of myself to please her. And it's just not sustainable long term. In order for me to be the best mama I could ever be, I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to take showers, right? It might be common sense to other people, but when you're in the thick of it, it's easy to forget that. All right, so moving on from that, so what are some other things that you can do with what you've heard from me today? So you can also consider, are you oftentimes doing things to make other people happy at your own expense? Are you acting out of fear of other people potentially having negative reactions to you, sticking up for yourself and setting your boundaries? And as I mentioned, that can be with a variety of people. It doesn't just have to be at work. It could be with your children, your significant other, your boss, your parents, your friends, whomever. Okay, so what are the behaviors you're engaging in now that perhaps you're not really that happy with, right? Because they are affecting your own health and happiness. And if you could change them, what would you like to be doing instead? What are some of the first steps you can take now to set healthier boundaries for yourself to embody the woman who puts herself high in her own list of priorities? So these are the things that you can consider so that you can start to overcome the people pleasing, popping off, saying peace out to people pleasing, and increasing your own wellness, overall wellness, health and happiness, and the harmony in your life. Okay, so after listening to this episode, if you're feeling more empowered to take control of your life and to live life on your own terms, this is something that I focus on with my clients in our one-to-one coaching sessions. We are working on getting clear on what it is you truly want in your life, who you need to become, the steps you need and want to take to achieve your goals, and how to overcome any obstacles that are getting in your way. And a part of this process includes setting standards for how you want to be treated in life. That's getting that clarity and setting, how to set healthier boundaries for yourself as needed to increase your own happiness and fulfillment. So if you're interested in learning more about the one-to-one coaching and to determine whether or not I'd be a good coach for you and you'd be a client that fits well with me as a coach, you can DM me on Instagram. And if you enjoyed this episode and it helped you, please leave a 5-star review. When you leave these reviews, I'm able to reach more women and to help them. So I would greatly appreciate you rating and reviewing the podcast. And you can also follow so that you know whenever a new episode is dropping, okay? And I look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode. And in the meantime, you can find me at Sudane Firestar on Instagram. You can also join my email list. The link is in the show notes. I love you. Bye.